personality type. I have a book here published in 1995 that includes a personality test in the form of 144 different questions, forced choice questions with 2 options, and the results determine how likely you fit, or how much you fit into each of the 9 different proposed personality types. In this book, there's a lot of information in it. It's written by Don Richard Riso, and I'm only going to go over the 9 types briefly. There's a lot more detail, and the actual process of the balance between the types, and it's broken into 3 different. There are 9 types, and there's a feeling triad, a doing triad, and a thinking triad, I believe. But either way, if you want more information, look up the work of this guy or buy this book. I'm sure they have newer editions out too. As like I said, this one's over 20 years old. But I bought it used, as is one of my favorite things to do, to buy used books. So without further ado, now, there are 9 types, 9 different personalities that we all fit into to some varying degrees. And in this section I'm about to read from, it lists the personality types and then a brief paragraph summarizing it. And then what a healthy behavior for one in that type would be, and what the average behavior would be, and then the unhealthy. I started to do this video, I got about most of the way through it, and realized that reading through the unhealthy ones was not really conducive to an ASMR video. And I think I'm just going to read through them this time, do it again, and just go over what the healthy behavior and the average behavior in each would be like. It's a little less dark, a little less morbid that way, and instead we can focus on what we should strive for healthy behavior, at least according to this author and his team. So, without further ado, personality type 2 is the helper, the caring, nurturing type, concerned, generous, possessive, and manipulative. Personality type 2 is the type in the feeling triad that is overexpressive of its feelings. 2s demonstrate their emotions openly, declaring their love and affection for others. The problem is that while they are aware of their positive feelings for others, they are unaware of many repressed negative feelings, such as resentment and hostility, as well as their own needs and demands. 2s see themselves as loving, kind, and thoughtful, as when they are healthy, they are. However, as they become unhealthy, their behavior contradicts their all-loving self-image, as they desperately coerce signs of love and appreciation from others. The following are some of the major behavioral characteristics of 2s. Healthy. They are empathetic, compassionate, feeling with and for others, caring and concerned about their needs, encouraging, appreciative, sincere, and warm-hearted. Service is very important to 2s. They are generous, giving, and helpful, loving, thoughtful people. At their best, very healthy 2s become deeply unselfish, humble, and altruistic, giving unconditional love to themselves and others. They feel it is a privilege to be in the lives of others. They are saintly, radiant, and joyful, truly healing presences in the world. Average. Average 2s begin to do more talking about what they will do for others than giving actual help. They become overly friendly, emotionally demonstrative, histrionic, and full of good intentions about everything. The attention they give is seductive, approval, strokes, flattery, cultivating people. Love and friendship are their supreme values, and they talk about them constantly. Become overly intimate and intrusive. They need to be needed, so they hover, meddle, and control in the name of love. Wanting others to depend on them, they give possessive, the self-sacrificial, smothering person who cannot do enough for others. They wear themselves out for everyone, creating needs for themselves to fulfill. They develop hypochondria, becoming martyrs for others, feel increasingly self-important and indispensable, although they overrate their efforts in others' behalves, overbearing, patronizing, and self-satisfying. So we'll skip the unhealthy paragraph and go into the next personality type, as I'll do for all of them. Personality type 3, the motivator. The success-oriented, pragmatic type, adaptable, ambitious, image-conscious, and hostile. Personality type 3 is the type in the feeling triad that is most out of touch with its feelings. Thus, the underlying problem with average to unhealthy 3s is that they tend to disown their true self to become more acceptable to others. They've put their energy primarily into learning how to come across well so that they can garner attention and admiration. 3s have learned to do what it takes to be noticed and to be in demand socially, projecting a desirable image because their private sense of self remains undeveloped. However, average to unhealthy 3s do not know who they are apart from their images they project. Rather than express what they actually think or feel, what they say or do will be acceptable and applauded. Some of the major behavioral characteristics of 3s are the following. Healthy. They're self-assured, desirable, have high self-esteem and belief in themselves and their own value. Adaptable, energetic, often physically attractive and popular. Ambitious to improve themselves, to be the best they can be. They often become outstanding, a human ideal, embodying widely admired cultural qualities. Others are motivated to be like them in some positive way. At their best, self-accepting, inner-directed, and authentic, everything they seem to be. They accept their limitations and live within them, modest and touchingly honest themselves. Average. They become highly concerned with their performance, doing the job well and being effective, often comparing self with others in search of success and status. They become careerists, determined to distinguish themselves in some way. Achievement and social recognition are important, pragmatic, goal-oriented, and efficient, but also calculating, becoming image-conscious, highly aware of how they appear to others. Potential problems with intimacy and honesty emerge as they package the self accordingly to the expectations of others, doing whatever produces the desired results. As identification with performance increases, they want to impress others and have their image reinforced. They constantly promote themselves, inflating their importance and accomplishments. Narcissistic, pretentious, with grandiose ideas about themselves. Aggression and competitiveness, as well as arrogance, hostility, and contempt for others' services. That really reminds me, quick aside here, that really reminds me of Bo Burnham's final release, which I saw this month, Make Happy. He talks about how people are obsessed with the idea of performing, and we're all performing to one another constantly, especially over social media, and how that really intermingles our sense of self and really is kind of a recipe for unhappiness. But it's kind of interesting. Sorry, just quick aside there as I read that. Personality type 4, the artist, the sensitive, withdrawn type, intuitive, individualistic, self-absorbed, and depressive. Personality type 4 is the type in the feeling triad that underexpresses its feelings. 4s find their feelings difficult to express because they are powerful, mixed with sexual and forbidden elements, often including hostile thoughts about themselves and others. Because their feelings can be shameful, chaotic, and dangerous, average to unhealthy 4s have learned to keep their feelings to themselves, partly so that they can sort them out, and partly to spare themselves from humiliation or punishment if they were to reveal how they actually feel. But as they continue to turn their feelings inwards, average to unhealthy 4s become painfully self-conscious and emotionally vulnerable, and suffer many far-ranging practical negative consequences in their lives and relationships. Some of the major behavioral characteristics of the 4s are following. Talk about tortured artist, right? Healthy. 4s are self-aware, introspective, and emotionally strong, aware of feelings and inner impulses, intuitive and sensitive both to self and others, gentle, tactful, compassionate, ironic view of life and self. It can be serious and funny, finding humor in their own foibles. Highly personal, individualistic, true to self, self-revealing, emotionally honest and humane. At their best, mixing the personal and the universal, possibly in art, which is real. I laughed at foibles because foible was one of my favorite words in high school. Not that foibles are funny, they're not funny. Inspired, self-renewing, and regenerative, able to transform all their experiences into something valuable for others as well. Average, they take an artistic, aesthetic, romantic orientation to life, expressing personal feelings through something beautiful, reinforce their sense of self through fantasy and imagination, to stay in touch with feelings, they interiorize everything, taking everything personally, becoming self-absorbed, introverted, and moody. Also become hypersensitive, shy, and very self-conscious, unable to be spontaneous or to get outside themselves. They remain socially withdrawn to protect the vulnerable self and sort out their mixed, increasingly negative feelings. They gradually feel different from others and therefore exempt from living as others do. Self-pity leads to self-indulgence, to becoming melancholic dreamers, disdainful, decadent, and sensual, living in a fantasy world that repels any kind of pressure or intrusion, increasingly temperamental, impractical, unproductive, effete, and petulant. Personality type 5, the thinker, the intense cerebral type, perceptive, original, provocative, and eccentric. Personality type 5 is the type in the doing triad that has underdeveloped its ability to do or to take practical action. 5s tend to substitute thinking for doing, feeling that they cannot risk acting until they have first carefully thought out about what they might do, learned as much as possible about the task at hand, and foreseen every possible outcome if they act one way or another. 5s are caught in their heads in thinking, since thinking about doing, feelings, and relationships is safer and less threatening than experiencing them. 5s are constantly preparing themselves, acquiring expertise in some area that will give them confidence in a niche in the world. The following are some of the major behavioral characteristics. Healthy. They observe everything with extraordinary perceptiveness and insight, mentally alert, curious, with a searching intelligence. Nothing escapes their notice. They value foresight and prediction, able to concentrate, becoming engrossed in what has caught their attention. They attain mastery of whatever interests them, independent, innovative, inventive, producing extremely valuable, original works at their best. Become visionaries, broadly comprehending the world while penetrating it profoundly, open-minded, take things in whole, their true context, make pioneering discoveries of something entirely new. Average. They begin conceptualizing everything, working things out in their minds, model building, preparing, practicing, gathering more resources and techniques, often intellectual into building theories. Detachment increases as they get drawn into complicated ideas and imaginary worlds. Fascinated by offbeat, esoteric subjects, even those involving dark and disturbing elements. They act like they are disembodied minds, more preoccupied with their visions and interpretations than reality, becoming high-strung and intense. They begin to take an antagonistic stance towards anything that interferes with their inner world and personal vision. They become provocative and abrasive, with intentionally extreme and radical views, cynical and argumentative. Personality type 6, the Loyalist. And for those of you who think I skipped 1, don't worry. Personality type 1 comes after 9. It's the last type listed. Personality type 6, the Loyalist. The committed, security-oriented type. Engaging, responsible, defensive, and paranoid. Personality type 6 is the type in the doing triad that is most out of touch with its ability to act independently of others. People with this type have little or no problem with doing. However, they tend to distrust their own thoughts and decisions, and so look for others whom they can trust and depend on. 6s invest their time and energy in people and groups that offer security and safety, but they also feel suspicious that others, including allies, will take advantage of them. Average to unhealthy 6s are prey to anxiety and insecurity when they are unsure of where they stand with others, particularly with their allies and supporters. Some of the major behavioral characteristics of 6s are the following. Healthy. 6s are able to elicit strong emotional responses from others, can be very appealing, endearing, and lovable. Trust is sense that they belong somewhere. Respond with reliable, responsible, trustworthy behavior. At their best, they become self-affirming, trusting of self and others, independent yet symbolically interdependent and cooperative as an equal. Faith in self leads to courage, positive thinking, leadership, and rich self-expression, sometimes as an artist. Average, they fear taking responsibility for themselves, prefer implementing well-defined rules and structures. They identify strongly with whatever gives them security, traditionalistic and loyal to those they have bonded with, working for stability and continuity. However, they may also react against their allies indirectly, passive-aggressively. Feeling pressured by responsibilities, they become evasive, indecisive, cautious, suspicious, and defensive. Increasingly contradictory, they give mixed signals and react unpredictably. To compensate for insecurities, they become mean-spirited and belligerent, taking an aggressive stance towards anyone they perceive as an enemy or threat to them and their security. In-groups and out-groups are identified as they become highly partisan, looking for scapegoats, authoritarian, prejudiced, and fear-instilling to silence their own fears. Personality type 7, the generalist, the spontaneous, busy type, enthusiastic, accomplished, excessive, and manic. Personality type 7 is the type in the doing triad that has overdeveloped its ability to do. People of this type tend to do too much. They put few restraints on themselves as they constantly search for new experiences and sources of stimulation. Average to unhealthy 7s often have many varied experiences and yet are unsatisfied because they cannot focus themselves on anything, lest they miss out on something more desirable. They impulsively do too many things at the same time, distracting themselves by acquiring and consuming more of everything to tend anxiety, and spare themselves for the fear of being deprived. Some of the major behavioral characteristics of 7s are the following. Healthy. They are highly responsive, excitable, enthusiastic, the most extroverted type. Stimuli bring immediate responses, and they find everything invigorating. Lively, vivacious, eager, spontaneous, resilient, exhilarated. Quickly become accomplished achievers who do many things well. They are multi-talented generalists, practical, highly productive, prolific, cross-fertilizing their many areas of interest and skill. At their best, they assimilate experiences in depth, making them deeply grateful and appreciative, awed by the wonders of life, joyous and ecstatic. They have intimations of spiritual reality, of the boundless goodness of life. Average, they begin pursuing a wider range of experiences that they believe will satisfy them. Become acquisitive and worldly wise, constantly seeking new things and experiences, the sophisticate, connoisseur, collector, and consumer. Being free and keeping their options open are important. Become hyperactive, unable to say no to themselves, to deny themselves anything. Uninhibited, they throw themselves into constant activity, doing and saying whatever comes to mind. Flamboyant exaggerations, storytelling, wisecracking constantly. Distracted and scattered, they begin to squander their time and energy, fear being bored, in perpetual motion, but into too many things, becoming superficial, dilettantes, merely dabbling around, materialistic. They get into conspicuous consumption and become excessive, yet greedy for more, never feeling that they have enough, demanding, self-centered, yet jaded and unsatisfied, ardent and insensitive, with addictive tendencies. See, aren't you glad I'm not going and reading the unhealthy after that? Already doesn't sound that average, or already doesn't sound that conducive to well-being. But I have a lot of characteristics of 7 there, so maybe that's why I'm taking that one so harsh. Personality type 8, the leader, the powerful, dominating type, self-confident, decisive, confrontational, and ruthless. Personality type 8 is the type in the relating triad that has overdeveloped its ability to relate and to dominate the environment. 8s typically have problems being close with people because they fear that others will try to control them. They see themselves as people who can get what they want. While not necessarily brutal, 8s can be aggressive in an unstated fight for survival for themselves and for those they are protecting and defending. They can have either a highly beneficial beneficial effect on the environment, or just the reverse. Some of the major behavioral characteristics of 8 are the following. Healthy. 8s are self-assertive, self-confident, and strong. They have learned to stand up for what they need and want, have a resourceful, can-do attitude and inner drive, decisive, solid, authoritative, commanding, honorable, natural leaders whom others look up to, passionate, take initiative and make things happen, champion of people, provider, protector, at their best, become self-restrained and magnanimous, merciful, forbearing, mastering self, carrying others with their strength. Courageous, willing to put themselves in jeopardy to achieve their vision, possibly heroic and historically great. Average, self-sufficiency, independence, and having enough resources are important concerns so that they become enterprising, pragmatic, rugged individualists, and wheeler dealers. What is that? Adventurous, risk-taking, and hard-working, but deny their own emotional vulnerability. They begin to dominate their environment, including others, want to feel that others are behind them, supporting their efforts, boastful, forceful, and expansive. They see themselves as the boss whose word is law. Proud and egocentric, they resist control by imposing their will on others, not treating them as equals. Everything becomes a test of wills, and they will not back down. 8s create adversarial relationships, becoming confrontational, combative, and intimidating. They use threats and reprisals to get obedience and to keep potential opponents off balance. However, their unjust treatment may cause others to band against them. Personality type 9, the Peacemaker. Personality type 9 is the type in the relating triad that is most out of touch with its ability to relate to its environment as it is. The Peacemaker, easygoing, self-effacing type, accepting, reassuring, passive, and repressed. People of this type have so completely identified with an idealized version of reality or another person that they lack a sufficient sense of themselves apart from their idealizations. 9s and their idealized versions merge into one. While this gives 9s a profound sense of peace and well-being, it also causes them to be too repressed, undeveloped, and unresponsive to reality. Rather than deal with anything that upsets them or contradicts their idealized vision, average to unhealthy 9s ignore what they do not want to see. The following are some of the major behavioral characteristics of 9s. Healthy, they are deeply accepting, receptive, unself-conscious, emotionally stable and serene. 9s are trusting of self and others, at ease with life and the natural world, patient, unpretentious, genuinely good-natured people, optimistic, reassuring, supportive, a calming influence, harmonizing groups, bringing people together, good mediator, synthesizer, communicator. At their best, they become self-possessed, feeling autonomous and fulfilled. They have great equanimity and contentment, paradoxically independent, at one with self, and thus able to form profound relationships. More alive, awake, alert to self and others, truly accepting, yet powerfully involved with life. Average, to become self-effacing, accommodating themselves, idealizing others, and going along with their wishes too much, living through them. Accept conventional roles and expectations naively, unquestioningly. Fearing change and conflicts, they become passive and disengaged, too easygoing, unresponsive, complacent, and phlegmatic. I haven't seen that word in a long time. They walk away from problems, brushing them under the rug. Thinking becomes hazy and ruminative, mostly about their fantasies, as they begin to tune out reality, becoming oblivious, unreflective, and inattentive. Emotional indolence, indifference, and willingness to exert self and stay focused on problems when the need arises. Begin to minimize problems to appease others and to have peace at any price. Become fatalistic and resigned, and if nothing can be done to change anything, engage in wishful thinking, looking for quick, magical solutions. Unhealthy, they can become repressed, undeveloped, and ineffectual. Do not want to deal with problems. I'm not going to read the unhealthy. Personality type 1, the final one, is the reformer. The rational, idealistic type, principled, orderly, perfectionist, and self-righteous. Personality type 1 is the type in the relating triad whose ability to relate to the environment is restricted. That is, ones need to feel justified by their conscience before they can act, Ones also have problems relating to people in their environment because they see themselves as needing to be perfect before they allow themselves to do whatever they want, or want whatever they want. Ones see themselves and the world around them as being in less than an ideal state, hence they are unsatisfied with reality as it is, and with themselves, since the world could always be improved. Average to unhealthy ones become increasingly angry and intolerant if the environment does not obey their prescriptions for perfection. Some of the major behavioral characteristics of ones are the following. Healthy, they are conscientious with strong personal convictions, rational, reasonable, self-disciplined, mature, moderate, extremely principled, always want to be fair and objective with others, ethical, truth and justice are primary values. A sense of higher purpose and personal integrity make them teachers and witnesses to the truth. At their best, they become extraordinarily wise, discerning and humane, transcendentally realistic, accepting themselves in reality as they are, inspiring and hopeful. They believe that the truth will eventually be heard. Average, they become high-minded idealists, feeling noblesse oblige, that is to say, that it's up to them to strive to improve everything. Reformers, advocates, critics, and crusaders. They become involved in causes, making progress towards the ideal, towards how they think things ought to be. Afraid of making a mistake, everything must be consistent with their ideals. Become orderly and well-organized, but impersonal, too emotionally constricted, rigid and logical, keeping their feelings and impulses in tight check, puritanical, punctual, pedantic, and fastidious. Their thinking is deductive and hierarchical, in dichotomies of black and white, right and wrong, good and bad. Very critical both of self and others, picky, judgmental, perfectionistic, highly opinionated about everything, correcting people and badgering them to do what they think is right, impatient, never settling for less than perfection in self and others, moralizing, scolding, abrasive, and indignantly angry towards people if they do not do as if they are told. And that's the end of the average section for the last one. As I said, there's the whole test in here, which I just did yesterday, and got some good information. It was always interesting to explore the facets of yourself and personality, and you might not agree with everything a book or someone somewhere is telling you about yourself, but it is interesting for food of thought, right? Having an open mind and being able and willing to question ourselves is a valuable tool for growth and for discovering the roots and the basis of who we are. So, I hope you kind of enjoyed that brief, and since it's relatively brief because our personalities are ultimately very complex. That's just 9 types, and we didn't even go into the less fun, unhealthy version of ourselves, but it is useful